by every means, we are entitled to anything that the United States took away from us in 1946 by its cruel Rescission Act, wherein the most derogatory thing that could ever happen is one paragraph said, the services of the Filipino soldiers who served in the USAPE and the recognized guerrillas shall not be considered as services in the United States Armed Forces.
Now we are here in America as citizens of this country, yet we are not getting any benefit equal to what the U.S. veterans are getting. And it's simply unfair and unjust because we fought along the same war with the Americans, and we are not getting any of the GI Bill of Rights. So it's about time we invite attention of American citizens from all walks of life to come and support us, because we really need this, because it is ours and it was taken away from us.
We're not talking about handouts for the Filipino American veterans here. We're talking about eligibility or entitlements. At this point, these Filipino American veterans are not even eligible to receive these benefits or entitlements from the Veterans Administration.
There was a commitment by President Roosevelt that whatever benefit being given to the American soldier, the same benefit will be given to Filipino veterans. The same commitment was again given by General MacArthur when he was already leaving Corregidor in his way to Australia.
They are Americans, they are Filipino Americans, they are citizens of this country. They deserve to be treated as the others are. There should be equal treatment under the law. They have every right to entitlements because they fought with. How come their comrades during the war, like those from Hawaii, from Guam, from Alaska, why were they given the entitlements that mainstream Americans were given? How come the Filipino veterans who fought with them are given a different treatment?
We are waiting for everything, but until now, the government is still giving us a deaf ear, as I suppose it is. And I hope they will be able to realize our sad plight, and later on they will give us all the benefits as we are longing for, we are asking for.
In fact, the Second World War was not the doing of the Filipinos. It was the war during those days among the Allied nation, particularly United States, who was then in full control of the Philippines.
In 1898, the United States of America bought the Philippines from Spain for $20 million. The purchase became official by virtue of the Treaty of Paris of the same year, thus making the Philippines a United States colony. The purchase ended the colonization of the Philippines from one colonizer, Spain, for over 300 years, and began a period of colonization under another, the United States of America. The new colonizer, the United States, left trails of blood and tears during the early years in their desire to force the Filipinos to obey and bow down to their new masters.
we became part and parcel and territory of the United States. We were citizens of the United States. Never mind if we were third class, second class, fourth class, but the fact that we were a territory of the United States makes anyone under the doctrine in the United States Constitution that anybody born in U.S. territory is a United States citizen.
By the late 1930s, the governed and the governing powers were able to come up with a semblance of harmonious relationships under a free and democratic system. Soon the Philippine Commonwealth government, fashioned by the Americans, was born in cooperation with the Filipino officials. For the first time in hundreds of years, the Filipino people experienced a period of peace and contentment in the country. Peacetime, they called it. Filipino families were finally being able to accept and balance two cultures besides theirs under the same roof, blending Filipino, Spanish, and American lifestyles. Before the Filipinos could truly appreciate the period called peacetime, the socio-political climate began to change. From air raid practices to instructions given by the authorities on how to take cover during air raids and the shrouding of lights at night, the citizens began to notice that just over the horizon, war clouds were looming. Young Filipino boys and girls, some barely in their teens, were actively being trained for military service to later be recruited into the Philippine Commonwealth Army.
In 1941, about 90,000 of us, young men, professional soldiers, clerks, civilians, responded to the red, white, and blue without any condition, without any thoughts of future benefits. We served, or rather, after we were called into the army of the Commonwealth, about a few days afterwards, we were inducted into service under General MacArthur. I remember on or about April, or rather October 1941, a white American captain and a Filipino major. Raise your right hands, he said. And when we did, I heard the words, you are now being inducted into the USAFE. My companions and I were saying, what is USAFE? We didn't know what is USAFE. It was much later on that we learned that USAFE means United States Armed Forces in the Far East.
The Japanese imperial forces began their operations to invade the Philippines and neighboring countries in Asia. Filipino-American forces withdrew to Bataan, and on January 22nd, General MacArthur ordered all his soldiers to take a final defensive position in Bataan. President Quezon agreed with General Douglas MacArthur to declare Manila as an open city on December 25, 1941, Christmas Day. Before ordering the American forces out of the city, General MacArthur instructed them to advocate what he called the scorched earth policy. This meant that all useful items, buildings, fuel, and military installations would be destroyed so that the enemy could not make use of them. But when they listened to the voice of America, it was announced that America was giving priority support to the European theater. When President Manuel Quezon heard of this disappointing report, he exclaimed, "This war is not of our making. We do not hesitate to fight by your side."
In the words of the last broadcast of the Voice of America from Corregidor, the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak. The next hour, the surrender came. Mind you, the surrender came on orders of MacArthur. In the uniform, we surrendered to the Japanese. We marched the Long Death March to San Fernando in the uniform of Allied soldiers. We entered Capas and were imprisoned in Capas camp as U.S. soldiers, Allied soldiers. How in the name of heaven they would say now that we were never in the service is something that even they cannot reason out.
For the rest who did not want to surrender and to be under the mercy of the Japanese army, chose to go to the mountains and joined or organized guerrilla units. It was because of these brave men that the timetable of the Japanese Imperial Army was delayed, which gave the American forces ample time to consolidate and prepare for their counter-assault.
When Bataan surrendered, or rather fell to the enemy, some of the soldiers refused to surrender. They went to the hills and the guerrilla mushroomed. Like, for instance, in the province of Abra, those soldiers who did not surrender went to the hills and then formed a guerrilla unit. And one of these officers who went to the hills is my father, who organized a guerrilla unit in the province of Abra.
All over the towns, villages, and barrios of the Philippines, the Filipinos resisted Japanese domination. One reason was the failure of the Japanese to live up to their propaganda slogan of Asia for the Asiatics, enticing the Filipinos to fight on their side and be against the Americans. While they endorsed this propaganda message, they were at the same time committing barbaric acts and killing Filipino citizens. As they continued to abuse the Filipinos, the reactionary spirit which the Filipinos admirably displayed in their opposition under the Spanish rulers and during the early days of the Filipino-American War were again rekindled against the Japanese. Colonel Edwin Ramsey, a dynamic guerrilla leader who wrote a revealing adventure-filled book about his experiences in the Philippines while leading his famous Ramsey's Guerrillas. In no other country in the world did subject people support their masters as did the Filipinos.
So sa palaban naman, napalaban naman kami ng gera at katunayan, kasama na nga namin mga Amerikano. Diyan sa may kawayan, Bulacan, hanggang sa Montalban. Kami na punta, napalaban kami. Kahit na kami Kareham sa amin, mga Pilipino namatay. Pati kasama ng mga Amerikano, yung 6th Division. Baski na tanungin nila si Colonel Ramsey at kay Captain Carrington, buhay pa sila. Katunayan, may retrato akong talagang galing kay Colonel Ramsey. Kasama sila sa si Captain Carrington.
I consider my father a hero based on his achievements during the war. As a matter of fact, last June 3rd, I traveled to the Philippines to represent my father. The town that he liberated, Zaraga, in Iloilo province, dedicated a park named after him, Colonel Pedro A. Saran Park, and in the middle of that park is his life-size statue. Also unveiled in the ceremony is a concrete marker where the names of the soldiers under him, under the 62nd Regimental Combat Team, were engraved and unveiled as well.
I joined the USAPA December 16. I was inducted. And then when I joined the USAPA, we were assigned in 7 kilometers away from Cotabato City, in Tamuntaka. And then from there, the commanding officer, Lieutenant Jose Francisco, he was training us how to throw bamboo grenade. By that time, that was January 23, and then he holded grenade quite long in his hand. So I was his personal bodyguard because I was the youngest. So he was killed instantly. That's how I recollect about war.
Whether that war was a war of the Americans against the Japanese, or was it a war between the Filipinos and Japanese, I feel very offended. And the presumption of one of the congressmen from Arizona, saying that it was not our war. That's why the benefits for the Philippine veterans for World War II are being denied. Among my orders, and if this is probably early 1940, this is probably September 41 rather. Note the word here, Commonwealth of the Philippines. In other words, we are under the American, we are, as a matter of fact, an American colony. Our own commander for the Philippine Army Air Corps was an American, Charles Backus. And actually, right after the declaration of the war, after Pearl Harbor, after the Day of Infamy, the U.S. Armed Forces in the Philippines was hard-pressed for soldiers.
I am the niece of Dr. John Santos Cuyugan. He's the brother of my father. He was the director of the Mintal Hospital in Davao. And so when the Japanese came, or shortly after they came, all the people in the surrounding areas evacuated to the hills because they were afraid of what the Japanese would do to them. Except my uncle. He said, "No, I'm not going to leave this house. I'm safe here." So he did not leave. But when the Japanese came, they, without much ado, they herded all the family. There were about 18 of them, 8 children, some nieces, and some katulong, helpers in the house. They herded them into the fields out of the house. And there, they, one by one, they raped the girls, the daughters, from age 10 to 18, 20. And after raping them, they were slashed in the stomach. They were killed. And my uncle was then shouting, because the next one would be the wife. My uncle was shouting, "Don't kill them, kill me instead." But the Japanese just ignored him. And so the next one was, well, of course, the nieces and then the other helpers, and then finally the wife. But when it came to the wife, he was already mad. He was screaming, and he was screaming mad until they came to him and slashed him also to death.
Filipino and American guerrillas were in constant contact with General MacArthur's headquarters in Australia, sending and receiving messages from him on the development of the war, and kept repeating his pledge. General MacArthur pledged, "I shall return to liberate the Filipinos."
Now the 125th Infantry Regiment sent out expedition to Siasi, Sulu. Siasi is a small island town with a mountain. It's only 14 kilometers diameter. Now, Lieutenant Timao was with 21, all of them. And they called their unit as Fighting 21. They do not have automatic weapons. They have only spring-fed rifles, shotguns, and the officers were only armed with pistol and revolver. And then they contacted the PC in Siasi, who joined them in Mindanao. So when the combination force of the PC that were in Siasi and the expeditionary force from Zamboanga seized the town, they are already on the sea. And so Siasi was taken without bloodshed.
On October 20, 1944, the U.S. 6th Fleet finally entered Leyte Gulf, and the American forces led by General Douglas MacArthur made the world-famous landing and fulfilling his promise, which he made in 1941. MacArthur had returned. Together with his officers, General Romulo and President Osmeña, MacArthur alighted from a landing craft and waited on the beach of Tacloban, the capital of Leyte province. By this landing, all able-bodied Filipino and American USAFI survivors were automatically returned to official military status. They all fought to recapture the Philippines from the control of the Japanese invaders.
When the liberation comes, we attacked the garrison in Kabangkalan town of Negros Occidental, and we have been fighting there for 3 days without any let-up. When the Americans arrived, they have a little thing to do. They just do the mapping operation of the Japs who are running in the hills.
Once again, Manila was declared an open city, open for its destruction by American air and naval bombings, while the desperate retreating Japanese soldiers slaughtered, raped, and massacred whole families in their wake.
Kami data dagi amin tiyan ti linya ami nagpakasyay hindi agabansay kami sumangat kami tila ito inassault me lagi si hapon dito dada dito yung ato pala ke paspasabtan da kami matang mura kamagam mi dito yan ti kayo saba talong akumpanya kami di nga nangassault ti dito company F, company D kan company E kan company C dasas. Ito'y ada natay ito'y babami, ito'y babaan na ito'y natay tidwa nga kakadwa kini nga ni Elpidio Valera ken ni Ernesto Castillo. Dito nga parte tinakatayan da. Handa lang ay siso magkidiya tinatay nga soda ti taga Banggit. Ito iti Kimam Kamangam Midi na lugar. Gingga na iti na na-capture mi ito'y lugar dito ngayon ti Hapon.
On August 6, 1945, the United States military dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Hundreds of thousands were killed and thousands more were injured. On August 9, 1945, the U.S. dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki, Japan. Again, hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians perished, and many were to die of radiation years later.
Everywhere we went, we were treated like heroes. People said, we did not hesitate to lay down our lives for the cause of democracy, for the cause of freedom, justice that America stood for. Then shortly after the war was terminated in the Pacific, when MacArthur signed the treaty with the Japanese on board the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, very shortly after that, the U.S.-American Congress passed the Rescission Act of 1946. As I said, we were stunned, like somebody pulled the rug from under us. First heroes, then all of a sudden, not even servicemen. What brought it about? Why?
The Filipino veterans began to see the impact it had on their military service. The Rescission Act, in essence, asserted that the Filipino World War II veterans were not official soldiers under the U.S. Army, and therefore their $3.2 billion claim of unpaid salaries during the war years were not going to be paid. This was strange to many observers, because in the same war, other nationals of 66 other countries inducted into the U.S. Armed Forces received an altogether different treatment from the U.S. government. These foreign nationals were granted equal rights and all the privileges and benefits that U.S. servicemen were entitled to. The U.S. House of Representatives Veterans Affairs Committee listened and said nothing at the hearing that was organized to learn about the pitiable conditions of the few surviving and aging Filipino veterans.
I remember when I was in Washington, D.C., I went to, they were lobbying at Congress, and I was talking to some of the veterans, and I heard that one of them died the day before, and he was from Hawaii. And I was thinking to myself that it was so sad that he died, because it was so hard, because he already fought in the war. And to die in battle against Congress to fight for their benefits, I mean, we have to fight for also, because they're the people who paved the road before us. You know, this isn't just a veterans issue because they're the ones that fought. This is an entire community issue, and the young people are part of this community.
Tulad itong medalya nito, padala nga sa akin ng US Army. Ha? Hanggang nawala ang aming kukuan. Yan ang aming biyayang itatagukan sa amin. Nakala, pagka kami napadala ng medalyang katulad ito, katulad mga talagang US Army Amerika, ibigay rin naman sa amin nasa nagserbisyo. But kami naman talagang nagpakahirap. Kaya gusto mo mangyari, tulungan mo kami mga nakaupo sa pamahalaan na yung serbisyo, sinasabi nilang equity, nga linalakan ng mga veterano, ipagkalo mo na sa amin.
If ever General Wainwright is still around, perhaps he might be able to talk more about our sacrifices in Bataan, Corregidor, and later on during the guerrilla days, and later on in Bestang Pass, wherein it is the Filipino soldier who redeemed the prestige of both the Filipino and the Americans during the war.
Honorable Congressman, the Rescission Act of 1946 is something that's very cruel to us. By not even recognizing us as having served in the United States Armed Forces. The bullets in Bataan did not choose their targets. The Japanese bullets, whether it's American, whether it's Filipino. And yet here we are now. You made us citizens, but with no benefits at all.
So, if possible, if I will be given the chance to face with the U.S. Congress, then I will be asking that that law should be repealed and recognize the Filipino soldiers as member of the U.S. Army.
Sixth Army was activated in 1942 to serve as the primary land force in support of General Douglas MacArthur's campaigns in the Southwest Pacific, from Guadalcanal to New Guinea to the Philippines. In 1946, Sixth Army relocated to the Presidio of San Francisco. On December 8, 1994, Headquarters Department of the Army announced that Sixth Army will be deactivated on June 23, 1995. With the departure of Sixth Army, no military units will remain at the Presidio, so it will be turned over completely to the U.S. Park Service. The soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are buried in this beautiful cemetery served their country so well, some paying the ultimate price. Like them, Sixth Army and the Presidio have served long and well, and we bid them farewell. Thank you.
Why we are not really getting the attention of these members of Congress? Because we always emphasize Filipino veterans. And therefore, Filipino veterans is out of their minds. Who are these Filipino veterans? But if you emphasize that we are Americans, we are Filipino-American veterans, we are demanding for our rights, that we have to be given the equity, the compensation that is due to our American brothers. So,
We need to have Filipino community to come together to work on this as one issue for the whole community. We need to share with the other communities so that this becomes an American issue. In order to achieve that, we need to educate. We need to come out and let people know what the issue is about the American Filipino veterans of World War II. Otherwise, these men and women who have sacrificed themselves during World War II and have waited over 53 years for this recognition and benefits will go in vain.
I really believe that a continuous town hall meeting, small groups, and then try to emphasize to them, because what I have observed is this: we are working for Filipino veterans, Filipino-American veterans, and sometimes it is really just not consistent. We organize and then we rally, we have to do this and this and this, but we got to have a program, a consistent program, a plan to reach out all these people in the community. Because once it is a continuous program and reaching all of this, eventually we'll get money, and that will support the veterans issue. Now, the veterans, they receive a little amount of money, so they can contribute also, because we don't want that there is no freebie in America. That's one thing. Even if we say that you are receiving only that kind of compensation, they must really participate and really share in whatever donation that they can give. Because when it is a freebie, it doesn't matter so much. And they don't consider it really so important issue.
May 6, 1999, just a few weeks ago, I was there. I was privileged to be present during the public signing and launching of House Resolution number 1594, which is entitled as the Filipino Veterans Benefits Improvement Act of 1999. We are calling upon all the Filipino-American leaders, as well as the members of the different Filipino-American communities all over the United States, to come up and stand up and join us in this struggle for equity and justice and fairness to the veterans of the Second World War. The Filipino veterans of the Second World War are fast disappearing as a breed. Many of them have died already. Many of them are very sick and feeble. Somebody needs to stand up. I think it is a great challenge. It is as well a great privilege for the generation of Filipino Americans, and that belongs, and that means all of us, to really come up now and stand up and fight that this basic fundamental freedom, justice, as well as the sense of fairness be given to the Filipino veterans of the Second World War.
Now, the Health Care Bill, or the Filipino Veterans Eligibility Act, which you just saw, would mean three things. Very simply put, it would mean, one, $30 million every year for our Filipino-American World War II veterans who are in the United States to get health care benefits at VA facilities. As you know, many of them are receiving Medicaid or Medi-Cal here. You know, this will supplement what they're getting. They have a choice of either going to Medi-Cal or VA facilities here in California. Just to let you know, my dad, back in '89, was denied access to VA facility. That's how I ended up here this afternoon. That's why I'm working on this full time, because my dad was, despite his nice U.S. Army discharge certificate on his wall, they said, you're not eligible to become a veteran, because they passed a law in '46 saying that you're not considered a U.S. veteran despite the fact that you are U.S. Army soldier.
Welcome ho sa mga veterano, ang aming mga bayani. Okay?
Today is a very significant and very important day for all of us because we are celebrating two things. Okay? We're celebrating Memorial Day to commemorate the efforts and the struggle for all our heroes who fought for our country's freedom and democracy during World War II. And second, we are also celebrating the kick-off of this Veterans Equity Center. Sa lahat po ng nandito, kami ho'y nasisiyahan na nandito po kayo at nabubuhay at meron po kaming mga pagkakataon na i-recognize namin kayo. Mabuhay po kayong lahat ng mga veterano.
Welcome to the Equity Center. Talaga.
Alam ko yung si Ramsey na sa Juvesia sa Barcelona.
We're going to have a demonstration, a march with a symbolic black coffin, cardboard, coffin at the gates of the Arlington National Cemetery to show President Clinton and the other veterans who will be there. There'll be about 10,000 veterans there. That the Filipino World War II veterans have been forgotten. He is not allowed to be buried at the National Cemetery, neither in Washington nor in the dozens of national cemeteries throughout the country because of that law they passed in '46. That's why we're fighting for that.
Yung mga estudyante, parada rito, daling kayo lahat doon, yung mga hindi mga doon. Pagkas, ay, parang pwede na. Pinukunan tayo. Dito na nga tayo.
Well, I started in '97. My first experience was with Filipino civil rights advocates. We went on our national convention in Washington, D.C., and it was there that I participated in a rally. Our veterans were chaining themselves to the front gates of the White House, and they were arrested because they were protesting. They wanted their equity. So that was my first experience seeing the struggle of our veterans. And then after that, I decided to do my senior thesis in college on the Delta Hotel fire victims. So that's when I really got to know them and see what their living conditions were like. So right now we're working with existing senior services, service providers, and we're at the Equity Center. We plan on, with the money that we get, we're going to have Mano Palolo program funding for it, the intergenerational program. It'll be a drop-in center where veterans will be able to spend their day and also get legislative updates. It'll be an information clearinghouse. And also, two of my grandfathers are Filipino World War II veterans who both never got their benefits. So it means a lot to me personally because both of my grandfathers already passed away, and I know they never received any recognition or any of their benefits. So I feel like, and most of us young people feel like it's our duty to carry on their legacy.
For our community supporters, our sons and daughters and grandchildren of our veterans, they have to go out, meet their few remaining veterans in the Bay Area and California and Hawaii, say a few words to them because many of them are lonely and isolated. They don't have their families here. And tell them that they are with them in this fight and they were going to get justice this year. And that they should do their part, these supporters, our friends in the community, by having them write letters to their Congress members, to thank our Congress members who are supporting us and to let
those who are not with us yet to be with us.
The Veterans Equity Center, the idea came out because of the plight of the World War II veterans here in the Bay Area. They came in here in 1992 and 1993. Most of them came during that time, and we noticed that through the years there were not enough resources to provide for their various needs, ranging from health, legal, and other social services. And even if they've been here for 5-6 years, we haven't seen any single entity or one agency that catered specifically to their needs. We have not identified an agency which had culturally and linguistically appropriate services for our veterans. So our mission is to provide these unmet needs for this special population. We will act as an advocate for the veterans. We will provide them with all the necessary information, but hindi rin sila naloloko.
My fellow veterans, let us all be united, even if we are, as they say, making suntok sa buwan. Even if we don't achieve anything, let us show them that we are dignified, we are worthy of respect, and that we took part in a war that was not ours.